improving your listening and reading skills. Score 7 plus Bands IELTS exam.
Foolish monkeys. Before several centuries, there was a very large, dense and dark forest. A group of monkeys arrived at the forest. It was winter season, and the monkeys struggled hard to survive the freezing cold nights. They were hunting for fire to get warm. One night, they saw a firefly and considered it a dab of fire. All the monkeys in the group shouted, "Fire, fire, fire, yeah, we got fire." A couple of monkeys tried to catch the firefly and it escaped. They were sad as they could not catch the fire. They were talking to themselves that they couldn't live in the cold if they didn't get the fire. The next night, again they saw many fireflies. After several attempts, the monkeys caught a few fireflies. They put the fireflies in a hole dug in the land and tried to blow the flies. They blew the flies very hard without knowing the fact that they were flies. An owl was watching the activities of the monkeys. The owl reached the monkeys and told them, "Hey, those are not fire. They are flies. You won't be able to make fire from it." The monkeys laughed at the owl. One monkey replied the owl, "Hey old owl, you don't know anything about how to make fire. Don't disturb us." The owl warned the monkeys again and asked them to stop their foolish act. "Monkeys, you cannot make fire from the flies. Please hear my words." The monkeys tried to make fire from the flies. The owl told them again to stop their foolish act. "You are struggling so much, go take your shelter in a nearby cave. You can save yourself from the freezing cold. You won't get fire." One monkey shouted at the owl and the owl left the place. The monkeys were simply doing the foolish activity for several hours and it was almost midnight. They were very tired and realized that the words of the owl were correct and they were trying to blow a fly. They sheltered themselves at the cave and escaped from the cold. We may go wrong many times and should seek and accept the advice/suggestions provided by a dropping dead weight. There comes a point in our life where we really have to consider our lifestyle. How we eat, how we dress, but most importantly, who we hang out with. I know how it feels to have to kind of cut yourself off from friends. But sometimes if you hang around immature losers, you will find yourself in a sticky situation. So please drop the dead weight. One day, I got suspended from school saying something inappropriate. B-job. I almost passed out because when I said it, the whole class became quiet. Now what do you think that made me look like? An immature loser, of course. I got myself in trouble repeating what another friend said. Guess what, he didn't get in trouble, I did. This was very uncomfortable to talk about with my mom. I think this is because I am trying to become a better Christian, and when you do so, you don't get away with the stuff you used to, but that's another story. After this incident, I woke up one morning and said, what was I thinking? I began to investigate what led me to have such a foul mouth. Then it clicked like a light bulb. It's because of the people I hang around. These guys I hang with are very negative. You can barely say anything to them without them thinking negative. For example, if I say something referring to a test and I say, "That was very hard," I think y'all can read between the lines. Immature losery like. Isn't it? When I returned to school, I have to admit, I began to hang around those same guys. Then I caught myself and I didn't completely ignore them, but I did distance myself. Doing so has changed my lifestyle. I don't laugh at everything, I can be quiet in class, and I have gained respect and dignity for myself and others and have been able to think straighter and pray more effectively. I really thank God for that. People who do not even know about the incident have given me compliments saying you are really turning out to be a real gentleman. Once again I say, stay away from immature losers so you can stop being one or don't become one. Yes, those guys are popular, but since I was one of those guys, I know better. You may feel left out, but after a while, feeling better about yourself is much more important, and you get a head start on the maturity us youngins need when we get older. God will be very pleased with you as well. Yes, I know it is very hard, but drop the dead weight. God loves you and He really wants to bless you, and oh, He is very real. Yes, there are some hard trials, some situations where you might want to question God, but it's for the better. The only reasons God can't bless you is because of your fear, ignorance, or things that you put in your life that won't let God reach you. Once again I say, please drop the dead weight. The story of Thumbelina. Once upon a time, a simple and kind-hearted woman lived carrying one desire in her mind. She had only one simple dream. Her dream was to have a baby girl. Days and months passed by, but her dream did not come true. Her desire to have a little girl grows stronger and stronger. One day, to make her dream come true, she visited a witch. She expressed her desire to have a baby girl. The witch offered a magic barley grain and asked her to plant it. The birth of Thumbelina, although the woman wasn't happy, she had a hope and planted the magic grain in a flower pot. To her surprise, the very next day, the magic barley grew into a beautiful big flower bud, which appeared like a tulip. Mesmerized by the beauty of the flower, she softly and gently kissed the bud. Since it was a magic flower, it blossomed instantly with her kiss on the bud. The woman was greatly surprised as inside the flower sat a tiny and cute little girl, who looked as small as a thumb. The woman named her Thumbelina, Thumbelina's life. She became the part of the woman's life. The woman provided Thumbelina everything she needed. She used walnut shell as her bed, petals of violet flower as her mattress and petals of beautiful roses as her blanket. Thumbelina played in the petal boat of the tulip and floated on a plate of water. She used 2 horsehairs as oars to sail around the lake. She had a beautiful voice. She played, floated, rowed the boat and sailed around by singing and singing and singing beautifully. Thumbelina snatched by a cunning frog. After playing for a long time, Thumbelina fell asleep in her walnut shell. As she was sleeping, a huge frog looked at sleeping Thumbelina in the shell through the window. The frog simply gazed at her, stunned at her beauty. She thought that Thumbelina would be the right girl for her son and picked her, ran away with her. Unfortunately, no one noticed Thumbelina snatched by a frog. The large frog carried her to the pond where her family lives. She introduced the beautiful Thumbelina to her ugly and fatty son, who was a mama's boy. Even the ugly son pleased when he saw her. However, both the mom and son frogs were frightened at the beautiful prisoner may escape from them. Rather than let her run away from their custody, she put Thumbelina in a water lily and put the lily into the middle of the pond. Mom and son were happy that Thumbelina won't be able to escape from there. In the meanwhile they both started preparing for the marriage. How Thumbelina escaped from the trap. The bitter talks of 2 frogs were heard by 2 minnows that were playing in the pond. They decided to help Thumbelina escape from the trap. The minnows, with the help of a butterfly, pushed the lily. The leaf with lily floated far away from the pond and Thumbelina escaped. Thumbelina encountered many problems. Although Thumbelina escaped from the frogs, she was soon captured by a beetle. However, very soon the beetle freed Thumbelina as she appeared very different. The summer approached and Thumbelina wandered in grasslands and across the flowers. She hardly found good food to eat. She ate pollen as her meals and dew as her drink. Soon, the rainy season appeared. It made the places nasty. The little girl struggled too hard to find good shelter. Even though she recovered from the heavy water drops of rainy season, the winter made her struggle even more. The winter was terrible and she could not find food. While she was roaming on the meadows, a big spider offered her help to provide food and shelter. The spider took her to a hollow tree and fed her with chestnuts. When the spider called his family to meet his new friend, the beautiful Thumbelina, others discriminated her as she looked different. She cried loudly and left Spider's home. Again, she wandered on the cold meadows. She saw a little cottage made of wood and leaves. Thumbelina decided to request help and knocked the door of the little cottage. It was a house of a mouse. The mouse was amazed at the beauty of Thumbelina. She requested him to help her and offer her shelter. The field mouse asked her to stay with him as long as she wishes. One day, the field mouse brought a friend, a rich mole. Field mouse asked Thumbelina to sing a song and she sang so beautifully and the mouse and the mole were well impressed by her singing. The field mouse ordered Thumbelina to marry the mole as he was very rich. The mouse was so cruel to her and she decided to run away from him. The mole planned for their marriage in the summer. After a few days, she nursed a swallow bird and gave her food every day. They became closer and the swallow bird shared her story. During the onset of spring, the swallow was completely cured and decided to fly away. She offered Thumbelina to join her. She made every possible attempt to escape from the mole marrying her. She was thinking and horrified how she going live in a tunnel with mole for the whole life. Just before a day of her wedding, the swallow asked her to join and spend a day in the sky. Without a second thought, Thumbelina grabbed the finger of the bird. The bird carried Thumbelina over the hills, meadows, plains, and until they reached the flower country. The country was full of colorful flowers. The swallow gently placed her on a beautiful flower, where she met the king of flower fairies. The king was impressed by her beauty, asked her to marry him and she instantly said yes.
The ass and his purchaser. A man who wanted to buy an ass went to market, and, coming across a likely-looking beast, arranged with the owner that he should be allowed to take him home on trial to see what he was like. When he reached home, he put him into his stable along with the other asses. The newcomer took a look round, and immediately went and chose a place next to the laziest and greediest beast in the stable. When the master saw this, he put a halter on him at once, and led him off and handed him over to his owner again. The latter was a good deal surprised to see him back so soon, and said, "Why, do you mean to say you have tested him already?" "I don't want to put him through any more tests," replied the other. "I could see what sort of beast he is from the companion he chose for himself. A man is known by the company he keeps." The dog and the bees. A dog, being very much annoyed by bees, ran quite accidentally into an empty barrel lying on the ground, and looking out at the bunghole, addressed his tormentors thus: "Had you been temperate, stinging me only one at a time, you might have got a good deal of fun out of me. As it is, you have driven me into a secure retreat, for I can snap you up as fast as you come in through the bunghole. Learn from this the folly of intemperate zeal." When he had concluded, he awaited a reply. There wasn't any reply, for the bees had never gone near the bunghole. They went in the same way as he did, and made it very warm for him. The lesson of this fable is that one cannot stick to his pure reason while quarreling with bees. A story from Confucius. Confucius once heard two of his pupils quarreling. One was of a gentle nature and was called by all the students a peaceful man. The other had a good brain and a kind heart, but was given to great anger. If he wished to do a thing, he did it, and no man could prevent. If anyone tried to hinder him, he would show sudden and terrible rage. One day, after one of these fits of temper, the blood came from his mouth, and, in great fear, he went to Confucius. "What shall I do with my body?" he asked. "I fear I shall not live long. It may be better that I no longer study and work. I am your pupil, and you love me as a father. Tell me what to do for my body." Confucius answered, "Tsze-lu, you have a wrong idea about your body. It is not the study, not the work in school, but your great anger that causes the trouble. I will help you to see this. You remember when you and Nu Wui quarreled. He was at peace and happy again in a little time, but you were very long in overcoming your anger. You cannot expect to live long if you do that way. Every time one of the pupils says a thing you do not like, you are greatly enraged. There are 1,000 in this school. If each offends you only once, you will have a fit of temper 1,000 times this year. And you will surely die, if you do not use more self-control. I want to ask you some questions. How many teeth have you?" "I have 32, teacher." "How many tongues?" "Just one." "How many teeth have you lost?" "I lost one when I was 9 years old, and 4 when I was about 26 years old." "And your tongue, is it still perfect?" "Oh, yes, you know Mun Gun, who is quite old." "Yes, I know him well." "How many teeth do you think he had at your age?" "I do not know." "How many has he now?" 2, I think." "But his tongue is perfect, though he is very old." You see, the teeth are lost because they are strong, and determined to have everything they desire. They are hard and hurt the tongue many times, but the tongue never hurts the teeth. Yet, it endures until the end, while the teeth are the first of man to decay. The tongue is peaceful and gentle with the teeth. It never grows angry and fights them, even when they are in the wrong. It always helps them do their work, in preparing man's food for him, although the teeth never help the tongue, and they always resist everything, and so it is with man. The strongest to resist is the first to decay, and you, Tsze-lu, will be even so if you learn not the great lesson of self-control. Story on bravery and courage. One cowardly person came to a master of martial arts and asked to teach him bravery. The master looked at him and said, "I will teach you only with one condition. 1 month you will have to live in a big city and tell every person that you meet on your way that you are a coward. You will have to say it loudly, openly, and looking straight into the person's eyes. The person got really sad, because this task seemed very scary to him. For a couple of days he was very sad and thoughtful, but to live with his cowardice was so unbearable that he traveled to the city to accomplish his mission. At first, when meeting the passers, he quailed, lost his speech and couldn't contact anyone. But he needed to finish the master's task, so he began to overcome himself. When he came up to his first passer to tell about his cowardice, it seemed to him that he would die from fear. But his voice sounded louder and more confident with every passing day. Suddenly came a moment when the man caught himself thinking that he's not scared anymore, and the further he continued doing the master's task, the more convinced he was that the fear was abandoning him. That way a month had passed. The person came back to the master, bowed to him and said, "Thank you, teacher. I finished your task. Now I'm not afraid anymore." "But how did you know that this strange task will help me? The thing is that cowardice is only a habit. And by doing the things that scare us, we can destroy the stereotypes and come to a conclusion that you came to. And now you know that bravery is also a habit. And if you want to make bravery a part of yourself, you need to move forward into the fear. Then the fear will go away, and bravery will take its place." The doer of good, it was night time, and he was alone, and he saw afar off the walls of a round city, and went towards the city. And when he came near, he heard within the city the tread of the feet of joy, and the laughter of the mouth of gladness, and the loud noise of many lutes. And he knocked at the gate, and certain of the gatekeepers opened to him. And he beheld a house that was of marble, and had fair pillars of marble before it. The pillars were hung with garlands, and within and without there were torches of cedar. And he entered the house, and when he had passed through the hall of chalcedony and the hall of jasper, and reached the long hall of feasting, he saw lying on a couch of sea-purple one whose hair was crowned with red roses, and whose lips were red with wine. And he went behind him and touched him on the shoulder, and said to him, "Why do you live like this?" And the young man turned round and recognized him, and made answer and said, "But I was a leper once, and you healed me. How else should I live?" And he passed out of the house and went again into the street. And after a little while he saw one whose face and raiment were painted, and whose feet were shod with pearls. And behind her came, slowly as a hunter, a young man who wore a cloak of 2 colors. Now the face of the woman was as the fair face of an idol, and the eyes of the young man were bright with lust. And he followed swiftly and touched the hand of the young man, and said to him, "Why do you look at this woman, and in such wise?" And the young man turned round and recognized him, and said, "But I was blind once, and you gave me sight. At what else should I look?" And he ran forward and touched the painted raiment of the woman, and said to her, "Is there no other way in which to walk save the way of sin?" And the woman turned round and recognized him, and laughed and said, "But you forgave me my sins, and the way is a pleasant way." And he passed out of the city. And when he had passed out of the city, he saw seated by the roadside a young man who was weeping. And he went towards him and touched the long locks of his hair, and said to him, "Why are you weeping?" And the young man looked up and recognized him, and made answer, "But I was dead once, and you raised me from the dead. What else should I do but weep?" Long, long ago there lived at the foot of the mountain a poor farmer and his aged, widowed mother. They owned a bit of land which supplied them with food, and they were humble, peaceful, and happy. Shining was governed by a despotic leader who, though a warrior, had a great and cowardly shrinking from anything suggestive of failing health and strength. This caused him to send out a cruel proclamation. The entire province was given strict orders to immediately put to death all aged people. Those were barbarous days, and the custom of abandoning old people to die was not uncommon. The poor farmer loved his aged mother with tender reverence, and the order filled his heart with sorrow. But no one ever thought twice about obeying the mandate of the governor, so with many deep and hopeless sighs, the youth prepared for what at that time was considered the kindest mode of death. Just at sundown, when his day's work was ended, he took a quantity of unwhitened rice, which was the principal food for the poor, and he cooked, dried it, and tied it in a square cloth, which he swung in a bundle around his neck along with a gourd filled with cool, sweet water. Then he lifted his helpless old mother to his back and started on his painful journey up the mountain. The road was long and steep. The narrow road was crossed and recrossed by many paths made by the hunters and woodcutters. In some place they lost and confused, but he gave no heed. One path or another, it mattered not. On he went, climbing blindly upward, ever upward towards the high bare summit of what is known as Obatsuyama, the mountain of the abandoning of the aged. The eyes of the old mother were not so dim but that they noted the reckless hastening from one path to another, and her loving heart grew anxious. Her son did not know the mountain's many paths, and his return might be one of danger, so she stretched forth her hand, and snapping the twigs from brushes as they passed, she quietly dropped a handful every few steps of the way, so that as they climbed, the narrow path behind them was dotted at frequent intervals with tiny piles of twigs. At last the summit was reached. Weary and heartsick, the youth gently released his burden and silently prepared a place of comfort as his last duty to the loved one. Gathering fallen pine needles, he made a soft cushion and tenderly lifted his old mother onto it. Hew wrapped her padded coat more closely about the stooping shoulders, and with tearful eyes and an aching heart he said farewell. The trembling mother's voice was full of unselfish love as she gave her last injunction. "Let not thine eyes be blinded, my son," she said. "The mountain road is full of dangers. Look carefully and follow the path which holds the piles of twigs. They will guide you to the familiar path farther down." The son's surprised eyes looked back over the path, then at the poor old, shriveled hands all scratched and soiled by their work of love. His heart broke within, and bowing to the ground, he cried aloud, "Oh, honorable mother, your kindness breaks my heart. I will not leave you. Together we will follow the path of twigs, and together we will die." Once more he shouldered his burden, how light it seemed now, and hastened down the path, through the shadows and the moonlight, to the little hut in the valley. Beneath the kitchen floor was a walled closet for food, which was covered and hidden from view. There the son hid his mother, supplying her with everything she needed, continually watching and fearing she would be discovered. Time passed, and he was beginning to feel safe when again the governor sent forth heralds bearing an unreasonable order, seemingly as a boast of his power. His demand was that his subjects should present him with a rope of ashes. The entire province trembled with dread. The order must be obeyed, yet who in all shining could make a rope of ashes? One night, in great distress, the son whispered the news to his hidden mother. "Wait," she said. "I will think." "I will think." On the second day she told him what to do. "Make rope of twisted straw," she said. "Then stretch it upon a row of flat stones and burn it on a windless night." He called the people together and did as she said, and when the blaze died down, there upon the stones, with every twist and fiber showing perfectly, lay a rope of ashes. The governor was pleased at the wit of the youth and praised greatly, but he demanded to know where he had obtained his wisdom. Alas! Alas! Cried the farmer, the truth must be told. And with deep bows he related his story. The governor listened and then meditated in silence. Finally, he lifted his head. Shining needs more than strength of youth, he said gravely. Ah, that I should have forgotten the well-known saying, with a crown of snow, there cometh wisdom. That very hour the cruel law was abolished, and custom drifted into as far past that only legends remain.